Uh, Today is July 20th, which is the anniversary of the moon landing. And what you may not know is that it's also the anniversary of my very first memory, which is of watching the moon landing on TV. This was a significant event for me, and it probably started an interest in outer space, but also in aliens and UFOs, which has continued throughout my life. And normally I don't make videos on this because, well, this is a subject is fairly controversial. It's interesting, but there's really no concrete proof whether aliens are visiting us or not. So it's something I remain skeptical on. I'm interested in it, but I don't have firm opinions. But today, in commemoration of the moon landing, I wanted to do something space related. So this will be about the question of whether aliens look like us. And since alien life may evolve on worlds very different from our own, there is sure to be a wide variety of alien life that looks different than us. Besides that, terrestrial life is itself very diverse, so it's to be expected that a lot of extraterrestrial life would appear unusual. But when I ask whether aliens would look like us, what I really mean are the sentient aliens who can get off world and come here. This narrows down the field from what alien fauna we might find if we were to travel to other worlds. Bear in mind that I am not saying that any aliens have actually visited Earth. I know there are various reports of close encounters with extraterrestrials, but none have ever officially contacted Earth people in general, and none have ever contacted me personally. So I remain unconvinced of the idea that extraterrestrials are visiting Earth. One argument that is given against the idea that aliens are visiting Earth is that reports of aliens usually describe them as humanoid or even sometimes as almost passing for human beings. This may seem fishy to people who, knowing that aliens would have evolved on planets with different environments, would expect them to look very different from us. And let me give you a case in point here. This is a picture of an alleged extraterrestrial named Asket. The picture was taken by Billy Meyer. And the most unusual thing about this picture here is this little bit of hair here. She has a slightly unusual hairstyle that you don't normally see when you meet the average person. Well, here's a singer named Michelle Delafave, and she identified herself in this picture of Asket, even down to the little bit of hair here. She was actually wearing that hairstyle when this picture was taken. And it looks like he took the picture of her off of the television and used that to represent an alien that he was allegedly in contact with. So that appears to be a fraud. And when you see pictures of aliens that look so human that they could be photographs of humans, well, maybe they are photographs of humans, as this case seems to show. So let's think about what we should expect from any sentient aliens who could visit Earth. First of all, these aliens would need to be capable of building spacecraft. Even if they eventually use something better than rocket technology, it's reasonable that their development of spacecraft would go through a phase of rocket technology. For that to happen, they would need to use fire. For fire to be available, they would need an atmosphere with oxygen in it. It's unlikely that a planet would just happen to have an atmosphere rich in oxygen without photosynthesis going on. What would be most likely is that plant life capable of photosynthesis evolved on their planet, eventually producing so much oxygen that the plants would start dying off unless animals capable of breathing in oxygen and breathing out carbon dioxide evolved. But why carbon dioxide rather than silicon dioxide? As has been speculated, perhaps some aliens are silicon-based. There's that episode of Star Trek, for example, where they meet a silicon-based life form in a mine. On Earth, at least, silicon dioxide is normally a solid, not a gas. Also, oxygen is needed by our bodies to burn calories. This works for carbon-based life forms like us because carbon can burn under typical terrestrial conditions. While silicon can also burn, it normally does so in stars with a minimum of 8 to 11 solar masses. So, that's not really going to be going on a planet with fire and water. Yeah. So it seems unlikely that a silicon-based life form could use oxygen to burn silicon sources of food. It's much more likely that oxygen breathers would be carbon-based. And since the plants would be their evolutionary cousins, that the plants would be carbon-based too. Besides that, carbon-based plant life would initially provide the most useful material for burning with fire. Being fire users, they would also have to be land animals, since fires don't start well underwater. So based on them needing to be fire users, we can conclude that they would at least be carbon-based, oxygen-breathing land animals. And besides being fire users, they would have to be tool users. After all, spaceships are large, complex tools that are built with other tools. To be tool users, they would need appendages capable of being used to manipulate objects. To be tool users, since evolution doesn't just build in new things when they would come in handy, their manipulative appendages would have probably evolved from something previously used for locomotion. So what would their ancestors have most likely used for locomotion? Wheels, perhaps? Probably not. Wheels require a smooth surface, and their ancestors would have probably lived in vegetation-covered areas that would not be easily accessible to wheeled animals. Besides that, a planet where controlled use of fire is possible would probably be in the right temperature range to support liquid water. And in fact, life would probably have evolved from water when it started out, and wheels would be even more useless in water. So their ancestors would have likely used legs for locomotion. Well, how many legs might they have had? Reptiles and mammals usually have 4 legs, but insects have 6, spiders have 8. Well, insects and spiders normally move around different kinds of environments than reptiles and mammals do. Their extra legs may help them climb vertical surfaces, or in a spider's case, crawl around on a web. Their legs are useful for small, light animals who do a lot of climbing, but it seems unlikely that insect-like animals would become sophisticated tool users. Tool use would be more likely for large animals who roam the land. For roaming the land, 4 legs is probably optimal. Like a table normally has 4 legs, 4 legs is all an animal needs to stand upright without tipping over. Extra legs would probably not increase an animal's speed that much, and they would require more coordination to prevent an animal from tripping over his legs at high speeds. Since bipedalism is possible, a 4-legged animal could eventually evolve to use its front legs as arms and hands. If an animal began with fewer than 4 limbs, then it might not have any to spare for evolution into arms and legs. While an animal was running on 4 legs, it would need to be aware of where it was going, so it would need eyes in the front of its body. 2 eyes would be optimal, since this would allow for depth perception. Since it breathes oxygen, it would likely consume plant or animal matter, and the most effective place for a food-grabbing hole would also be the front of the body. So it would likely have a head with eyes and a mouth. Therefore, a tool-using, fire-using alien would likely be a humanoid who uses hind legs for walking, but has evolved the front legs into arms and hands for tool manipulation. And besides using fire and tools, such an alien would have to be capable of civilization. Individual humans don't just make spaceships on their own. This is a huge project that requires scientists to figure out how a spaceship would work, engineers to design it, and workers to build it. Cooperation of this sort would require language. Since these would be land-dwelling air breathers on a planet within a temperature range for controlled fire and liquid water, it's very likely that sound would become a medium of communication. They would likely be capable of speech through the equipment they use for breathing, and they would likely have ears for hearing. Let me get a good picture of that. And let me pick up. Two ears would be optimal since they would allow for locating direction. So intelligent extraterrestrials capable of building spaceships would probably be land-dwelling humanoids with heads that have eyes, ears, and a mouth. Although alien life could take many other forms, it's unlikely that these other forms would build spaceships that can reach other planets. So if aliens are visiting Earth, it is very likely that they are humanoids like us, and we should not consider reports of humanoid aliens as such evidence that they are just products of limited human imagination. But although they may resemble us, I wouldn't expect them to be able to mate with human beings. Parallel evolution may lead them to have some of the main features as us, but their DNA, if that was even what life on their planet was based on, would likely be too different from ours. For all we know, life on other planets could be based on something other than DNA. Parallel evolution means that similar selective forces would lead to phenotypic similarities, but it is no guarantee of genetic similarity. The idea found in popular science fiction, such as comic books or Star Trek, that humans and aliens can have children together is most unlikely. And even if aliens could pass for humans on the street, it's unlikely that they could fool a doctor during a medical examination. So while I do believe parallel evolution would make any aliens who could get off world very similar to us, at least in broad outline, being humanoid and having heads and things on their heads like we do, it wouldn't go all the way and make them just like us. Hello, you're watching For the Love of Wisdom, and in this introduction to this channel, we're going to be looking at the question, why does philosophy matter? Consider this, you can use powerful computer software without ever knowing how to write a line of code. Greetings, Earthlings. Some of you have been wondering what we aliens are doing here on your planet and why we have not made official public contact with your governments and with your societies. I'm here to answer those questions. I work as part of an intergalactic media conglomerate, and our job is to sell the media from your planet to other planets and